So if you don't know by now, I always base my track guides on the Thursday sessions because I've set them up for static conditions. So when you do your test drive, if you want to compare versus my track guides, you jump into the Thursday, January 8th session, view session, and then you pick your car from here, wherever car you have. Partly cloudy, 26, July 1st, static weather, static conditions. You just click here, test drive, and those are the conditions for the track guides. If you want to look at the conditions for the actual race, you come over to the Friday session, view forecast, and you can see here, temperature-wise, you're going to see the race starts around 2 p.m. and it just gets hotter. It's nice and clear, not very many clouds. It's just going to get hotter. So if you're not aware, iRacing, typically around noon, it starts getting, well, I mean, throughout the day, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Typically around 3:30, 4 o'clock p.m., the temperatures start to drop down. So you can see here it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. That's why the track guide is fairly hot, is because they expect at that time, usually my track guides are always to replicate start race time. So it's probably around 2 o'clock, 1:55, somewhere around there. Yeah, it'll get hotter and hotter and hotter for about till 4 p.m., 3:30, 4 p.m., and then temps start to cool off. And you'll see that on track temps and also in here, it just starts cooling off a little bit. So that's why the track guide for this Mosport is quite hot. All right, welcome to the track guide for the GR86. Setup has been updated. As far as how the car drives, there's a lot less roll and forward pitch and rearward pitch when you're getting on and off throttle and turning. Honestly, the car feels amazing. The fixed setup, I just took out fuel, readjusted the spring or the ride height, and then um, took off traction control as usual. So it's the same fixed setup, just traction control removed and fuel adjusted. Car handles really well now. I find there's a slight difference with the under braking. I don't know if it's the hot temperatures of this track or if it's just like this on normal, but I felt I had to brake a little bit harder than usual. Kind of a little braking a little bit earlier as well. It could be because the car is a little bit faster, that it's just something I'm not quite used to. But I really love the trail braking into the corner. The rear end rotates really well, and it's very fun to drive, especially around this track. You can really get that rear end to rotate into the corner very nicely and then get on power early and power out of the corner. So it's a really well balanced car. Honestly, I find it even more fun than the previous GR86, which is the same thing, but just something they did with the setup, something they did with the dynamic physics of the suspension. It's absolutely awesome. I kind of wish I was driving it. But let's get into this one here. This is Mosport. This is just loaded up from the test session from the Thursday night. So I jumped in, did some laps just to get comfortable with it. So you can see it slowly dropped off. Then I reset and did a fast lap, 131.196. So we're going to play this lap now, and then we'll slow down and talk about it. and that is at 131.196. So let's go back and we'll slow down a little bit. I don't know if you guys noticed, but turn one was a really good example of what I was talking about with the rear end. With trail braking, getting the rear end to kind of step out a little bit and help you turn in. So let's play it a little bit faster, and then I'll talk about it as it's happening, and then I'll slow down. So right here, you can see that rear end's coming out, and then I get back on throttle. It's subtle, but you can kind of tell it. So coming into turn one, there's no real great brake markers. This is mostly feel that I'm just kind of going with in peripheral vision. But you can kind of start, it's as you start turning in a little bit, so you're out wide, I guess just this gray, or not gray, but the yellow patch of grass. I start turning in just before it, and as you start turning in, same with that yellow patch, it's just a very, very light trail brake. So off throttle, very, very light trail brake, and not for very long, just to get that rear end to kind of step out. And then as soon as it does, I'm going to kind of hover a little bit, and then I'm going to get on throttle. What I'm aiming to do is, you can tell I'm getting back on throttle now. What I'm aiming to do is trying to get my left-hand tires onto this concrete patch, and then my right-hand tires onto the asphalt, and eventually over this curb. So you'll see here, two left-hand tires following the concrete patch, right-hand tires still on the asphalt, and then I'm eventually going to cross over this curb. So right about here, let's go to far chase. You can see I'm starting to touch this curb. Let's go down a little bit to adjust this. So you can see here, that's exactly what I do. I want these two left tires on this concrete part, right tires on the other side, and then eventually cross over. You can probably get a little bit more aggressive than this. Typically, I like having my right-hand tires right over because it kind of upsets the car a little bit coming off of this, and it helps rotate a little bit. Let's go back to cockpit. So this is going to be a pretty consistent thing with this track. Is a lot of this concrete, you basically always want two tires on it and two tires off of it. Almost every corner has this, so it's kind of a good reference point to see where you're turning in and where, if you want to compare yourself versus my laps, it's an easy comparison because it's a pretty easy visual to spot. As far as overtaking, there's not a whole lot of braking here, and there's a bit of a straightaway, so just be careful. You're going to have cars, GT4s and BMWs potentially trying to overtake you through this one. There is lots of room on this one, so you can kind of stay wide. If you wanted to defend for it, I would suggest moving over to the right early, showing that you're going to stay on the inside and allow them to try to overtake you around the outside. So again, coming into here, two left tires. Honestly, I would recommend it, depending on how many people are coming. Obviously, if there's a group of cars, it's more difficult. But if there's just one at a time, just lift nice and early. You can always lift pretty early, come into the corner, and I always try to stay on my line in the corner. So if I can let a car go by before the corner, I'll let off early, let him go by, and then continue and take my line through the corner, if that helps at all. Next corner, there's a little blue hut. It's a very easy reference point. There's a crest of the hill. So as you're going up the crest, as soon as you kind of get to the top of the crest, I'm immediately starting to turn left and starting to trail brake a little bit here. So you'll see here, I'm already starting to load that up. So I'm starting to go right here. And as I'm coming over the crest, I'm already turning left. So that way my tires have the chance to fall on their slip angle. And then as I get to the crest, I'm going to get off the throttle and onto the brake a little bit. So here's the crest, off the throttle, just a slight trail brake. I'm going to downshift into fourth from here. I want to try to get as far over to the left as possible. Still trail braking, getting that weight on the front nose. And you'll notice right here, there's an opening, and there's also a fall off. So as soon as you get over this spot, the track dips down even lower. What I like to do is have my left-hand tires as far to the left here as possible, almost touching the grass, still trail braking up until this point, and then as soon as you get to the right before you drop off, I typically try to get on throttle to try to use that dip for the rear end to kind of come out a little bit. So you'll see here off the brakes, as I'm coming over this ledge, I'm going to go full throttle and then bounce kind of back off a little bit and then bounce back on again. This particular corner, I did overcook it just a little bit. Typically, I'd like to try to stay to the left here a little bit more. I should have just eased off the throttle or held it off a little bit longer. Because I like, again, there's this concrete patch. I want to be to the left of this concrete patch, which I do, but I just miss my apex a little bit. So I washed out a little bit here. I could have, yeah, just lifted it slightly off the throttle because ideally I'd want to get my left-hand tires over this white line. That way I can get out of this corner a little bit easier. But this time I'm just pushing full out, and you'll notice that I go fairly wide coming out of here. I even touched a little bit of dirt. Ideally, I wouldn't want to go as wide as this. I'd want my two right tires kind of where this white line is. Maybe just touch the curb and then come over to the left immediately as fast as possible. But because I'm so far to the right, I'm even in the dirt a little bit. Let's go back to that fire chase. You can see I'm in the dirt. That's not ideal, so I probably could have gained a little bit of time here. Ideally, you don't, about a half a car's width over to the left here. As far as traffic management, um, this one is not a fun corner to deal with traffic, because if you don't nail this specific corner here, if you're off line, it's very hard to kind of control, especially on the outside. I find the camera kind of drops off, and if you miss your kind of turning, it's even harder to make the corner. So ideally, if there is a lot of traffic here, you'll want to slow down more than you think, because otherwise it'll just wash off the track. So you can either come out of this corner, stay to the left side on the inside, and just show that you're staying left and you're going to hold this corner. But if you do that, you got to make sure that you can make the corner. So you got to slow down a little extra, come down to the inside here and hold this line, because as soon as you get over this little lip here, the car automatically wants to go to the right. And if you start the corner over here and you start going there, the car wants to push over to the right, but you're already at the extreme of the right of the track, so you're just going to end up going off in the grass and then having a fun time trying to skate around the grass. So traffic management in this corner specifically, I would be, if anybody's kind of nearby, I'm almost letting go completely, slow myself down. I might lose a second, but at least you'll survive. Uh, yeah, this one's a very difficult corner to go side by side with any cars. It's not ideal because it's kind of a one line corner, and anything offline, you have to dramatically lose speed to be able to hold that line. So just be very aware of this corner is not fun for multi car action here. So again, as soon as you get over that crest, back on the throttle. Try to be a little bit closer to the left here. And then as soon as you get out of the corner, you immediately come over to the left. There's not really much brake markers here, but you can see differences in grass and a lot of tire marks. So I aim my car right back across the track. Again, you're going to see me start to turn right to load up the slip angles here. And I'm using pretty much these tire marks, kind of where this crisscross tire mark is, as kind of a braking reference. You'll see here there's a tire marker. Shortly after, I'm coming off the throttle. Fairly hard on the brakes. I'd say probably 60, 65%. You can see that I am turning right as my car is still kind of going left just to load up the tire angles. And then I'm going to turn in. Again, here's a concrete patch. So I got two left tires on the concrete, two right tires on the asphalt. Down to third gear for this one. And I want to do kind of a late apex with this one. And I find the late apex is easy to follow on this one because you pretty much at the crest of the corner. So this hill is going upwards, and then let's slow it down a little bit. Pretty much about here-ish, it kind of starts going downhill. So you'll notice the inside of this corner where the concrete is, on the inside, the asphalt is kind of cambered. So that's why you want your two right tires on this side, because there's less grip on this side of the track. So if I put my two right tires on this one, I'll have a little bit more grip. And you can see I'm getting on throttle fairly early. I'm getting my two left tires still on the concrete, two right tires on the asphalt. And as I get close to the apex, I'm getting back on throttle. And I'd say the apex is pretty much here. So if you want a visual, you can pretty much look at these signs here, draw a straight line across. That's pretty much where your apex is, and that's where the best grip is for this one. And then you can pretty much go full throttle, and you'll slowly wash out, but not too bad. So that's kind of how you take this one at full speed. As far as traffic management, just be careful when you're coming out of this corner. If you're all alone, I immediately come over to the left. If there's cars on your inside, you can't do that. You're going to have to leave space, so you're going to have to stay to the right. Most likely that's what's going to happen. I'd be surprised, unless they're a little bit further back. If they're a little bit further back and you've got the clear air, you can come across and they will dive to your inside. And as far as going into this corner here, you can definitely stay a little bit wider. You'll lose a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. So you can stay nice and wide. You can maybe have your two left tires on the asphalt over here and the two right tires in the concrete. And then allow the cars to kind of get inside of you. And if possible, if you can sneak in behind them, that would be ideal. So you can sneak in behind them, come across the track, still hit your apex, and then use their draft a little bit for the next straight. So I don't know if you can have a visual representation of this, but basically you're all the way out wide here. Let's maybe do the far chase because you can see a little bit better. So what I'm talking about is having your car way out here. So you'd have your car all the way to the outside. You let all these cars kind of pass through the inside. As you're slowing up, as soon as you get clear of them, I would turn right and then come straight across the track. Make sure you're clear. Come straight across the track. You're going to have all four wheels come right across, and you're still going to try to hit that apex. You'll be coming across the track here, hit the apex, and off you go. And then you can probably use the draft of the car in front down the next straightaway. So this is the next straightaway. Again, as soon as you come out of this corner, you're going to want to dive immediately to the right. Well, not dive, but you just nice and gradually come across to the right. You want to open up the next corner. Be aware of traffic management again. If you are all alone or on a quality lap, you can take this almost full. Well, I think you can take it full throttle. So you're going to open it up. You've got to make sure you turn in on time, though, because if you miss the turn in, you're going to end up washing out a little bit and have to get off the throttle. Ideally, I like turning in before this sign here. Quite a little way. I'd say what? I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 cars before this kind of line here. So as your windshields start to kind of lose sight of these signs on your left here, that's kind of where I'm starting to turn in. Again, you want to come as close to the left as possible, using the camber of the track, almost putting your two left tires in the rain gutter here. Staying to the left as much as possible. This one I struggled with quite a bit. I'm so used to the other GR86 that I was braking like much later. So it's either a combination of the top speed is faster now, and there's a little bit less grip with the pitch of the car. So there used to be a lot of forward pitch, so there'd be a lot of weight on your front wheels, so you'd have a lot of grip, and you could brake quite late. Because I used to only start braking at the bottom of the hill, whereas now I'm starting to brake while I'm going down the hill, and then coming to the right. As far as traffic management, uh, this one's a difficult one because you're basically gonna have to lose a decent amount of time if somebody's side by side with you. Again, I would lift, save fuel, wait till they're by, and then try to get behind them. If there's multiple cars, Just be aware that the BMW and the GT4s, they're probably going to try to go around the inside. If they try to go around the outside, it's fairly difficult because the camber of the track kind of falls off. So it is quite hard to maintain that line. Ideally, you want to stay to the inside. So if you're coming out of this last corner and you see a bunch of cars around you, maybe kind of stay to the left here. Try not to go in the middle of the track because then you might get split from the outside to the inside if there's multiple cars. I would kind of suggest picking staying to the left, allowing them to kind of battle around you to the right. That would probably be the preferred line for the GR86 if there's multi-class coming. So again, here you're going to be sticking to the left, close as possible to this kind of rain gutter. As far as braking, you're kind of doing it as you straighten the car out. So you're still full throttle here. As you kind of straighten this car out, you can see I'm starting to apply the brakes from as wide angle as possible. Really, really, really hard on the brakes. I'm going 100% here, downhill, still 100%. And as I'm kind of starting to go uphill, you can see I'm starting to turn to the right here. I want to get as close as possible as this curb without getting on the curb. Again, there's a concrete patch. You can use these for a very easy visual reference. I'm actually missing the concrete patch a little bit here and coming pretty close to this curb. But as I'm starting to lift or go up the hill, I'm easing off the brakes just to help off the ABS, just to help with traction. And it's giving me a little bit more steering because I'm steering while braking. Um, that's why I want to get off the brakes fairly aggressively. And down in second gear, pretty much as you're about to crest the hill, just for stability wise. And again, you're gonna still brake, but it's very light trail brake. I want to try to get as close to this curb without going off. So a lot of times, if you're braking too late, you're going to be on the brakes really hard, and you're just going to lose that turn-in grip if you don't trail brake or if you don't release the brakes enough. You're going to lose that front-end grip, and you're just going to end up going straight off and then hitting that wall. Very easy thing to do. So definitely try to back off where you're braking. So I would prefer an early brake. This was a very, very aggressive braking situation. I wanted to push the limits just to see. So you can see as I'm starting to turn the car in, I'm getting off the brakes, still trail braking, trail braking, trail braking. And then once the car's kind of stable and I've slowed down enough, I'm going to slowly pick up the throttle. And you can usually tell because of how the car turns in. So if the car's turning in with minimal steering, you're doing a pretty good job here. And again, 2 left tires on the concrete patch, 2 right tires over the asphalt. And you can tell I'm already starting to get on throttle. So I've pushed the entry really aggressive on this one. Because this is like a dual apex kind of corner, or one corner, a very, very small straight, and another corner. I like pushing the entry a lot on this one. The only thing is you got to be careful if you don't push it too much because you'll go off. So as far as trying to get the best amount of time, um, I like gaining time on entry, and then in this little middle part, um, I'll slow down a little more than you would kind of expect, just so that I can try to get on power as early as possible for the next portion. Because the next portion is very important to get on throttle as early as possible. So you can see here, the car is rotating, 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 and then as soon as I get to this concrete patch, I'm getting back on throttle. Pretty damn aggressive. I want to try to get my right-hand tires to just clip this curb and nothing more. So let's see if I actually manage to clip it. So yeah, just clip. That is pretty much perfect. You just want to touch it and use these concrete and asphalt differences here for maximum grip. You can come out a little bit wider than this, but it doesn't really do much as far as lap time. In fact, you'll probably scrub a little bit more time. But you can see here, I pretty much come to the limit of this curbing. And then as you're coming uphill, you're basically trying to make the track as short as possible. So I'm going to stay to the left here, and then I'll come over to the right. Actually, let's go back because we'll talk about traffic management on this one. Um, this is really not a good place to be side by side. So you'll want to avoid side by side as much as possible. So either allowing other cars to go by or defending the inside, making sure you don't want anybody on your inside on this one, to be honest. So I would stay to the inside to make sure nobody can kind of get there. Kind of a early defensive move is to stay to the right. That way nobody kind of gets on your inside and you can kind of manage your corner a little bit better than being at the mercy of somebody else. Because if somebody else is on your inside and they overshoot it, they're just going to push you right off the track. So if you want to stay safe, stay to the inside, defend that one. That way you have where you want to be. Obviously, you have to leave room to the outside if there's another car here. But chances are, if they're trying to push it, if they're going to try to push an overtake on the outside, they're probably going to get to this point and just go straight off. I'd be very surprised if they can do an outside overtake at Moss Corner here. It's yeah, it's not a very side by side friendly corner. And again, if you give them space, if you just let these cars, even if there's multiple cars coming, I would just kind of let off, even lose a second and a half, let them all go, and then try to nail the exit as well as possible. So that you get the maximum amount of speed down the straightaway. So you'll see here, left, as the track is starting to open up, I'm going to go right. Just be aware that if you do have traffic behind you, you might have to stay to the left a little bit because they might just try to all be coming to the inside of you. But usually it's not too bad. There's lots of space on this straightaway, so staying to the right as much as possible. Kind of as you get past this Canadian Tire. Where is this Canadian Tire? These Canadian Tire signs, you'll see the track kind of opens up, starts going to the right. I kind of straight line it towards this little shed here. So as this track kind of continues to the right, you'll see I'm just slowly drifting across, coming over to the left here, looking at these lampposts. So I'm all the way to the left now. These are really fun corners. There's there's a double apex right-hander. Then you're going to come over, there's a left and then a right for the straightaway at the front straight. Very fast corners. You can be side by side through pretty much all three of these. If you watch back last season, there was awesome battles throughout these sections in all classes. Really easy to be side by side even between classes as long as people give each other room. So these are really fun corners for multi-class racing. But as far as like a quality simulation here, you're looking at these kind of lampposts. I'm kind of going to start turning in first between these two lampposts, and then just a light trail brake and down to fourth gear for the GR86. So you'll see here, I'm starting to turn in at the first lamppost, and kind of you can see the second lamppost right about here right now. That's where I'm kind of getting off throttle onto the brakes. I want to try to get as close to these curbs as possible. I miss. Well, I don't really. I do miss the curbs a little bit here, but it's actually kind of in that right range that I don't necessarily want to get right on the curb for the first one. I want to get on the curb for the second one. So you want to miss the first one a little bit. So I'm probably with a car's length or a car's width away. You could be a little bit closer, but I wouldn't want to go much closer than, let's say, here-ish. So like a quarter of a car over, you could potentially go. Cockpit. So I'm coming into this corner here, just a very light trail brake. Managing the steering, using that chill brake to get the rear end to kind of turn. So as I said, the first curbing, you want to get about a car's width away, and you're going to slowly open up the corner, and then you're going to come right back across. Again, here's the concrete patches, and then the asphalt, you want your left tires on the concrete, your right tires on here. I like a late apex with this one because you'll see I mount right up onto the curb. So I've got 2 right tires. At the exit of this curb, I'm coming right up it. So you'll see here, fire chase, wherever the fire chase is, I'm right up on the curb and I'm going to jump off the curb. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want to open up the next corner. And if you're over here, you're going to lose speed trying to turn in because the corner is not as open as possible. So if you come across here, you'll jump right across the curb, slightly into the grass a little bit, but you'll jump over the grass and you'll land. And you kind of just get on the brakes as you're coming off. So you're getting off the throttle as you jump over it. And then as you kind of land, trail braking a little bit, and then you're going to start turning left. So back to cockpit. So you can see here, boom, I'm jumping off. You can see the car bouncing around here. I was getting off the throttle, and then it's slightly on a trail brake. Let's see. Okay. Turning left. I believe I go down from 4th. Yeah, okay, there's a downshift. So I currently I'm in 4th gear. Coming up here, doing this little jumping off the curb. You can see off the throttle, slight brake in, downshift into 3rd, a little bit more braking application to make sure I can make the corner. Kind of turn in. This is kind of a bit of an early turn in, but I don't quite apex right away. So you'll see the 2 right tires again on this concrete, left tires on the asphalt. So you can see that it's a bit of an early turn in, but I'm not quite apexing right away. But I am going to mount these curbs again. So you'll see here, my car lifts up. Again, I'm going to open up this corner, try to open up the corner as much as possible. I'm going to jump off of it and then stick to the left, all the way to the left here. You can see the Audi's signs. It's basically, when I get to these Audi signs, you'll see here I'm off the throttle and I'm starting to brake just slightly. And I'm also starting to already turn right. So you can see my car is pointing left, but I'm actually starting to turn right. You can see the steering wheel here. So it just, again, allows that slip angle on your tires to settle. And then your main focus is put in the right-hand turn in. So again, left tires on the concrete, right tires on the asphalt, and then trying to get as close to this curb without really touching it, because this one's no point jumping it. You want to maximize speed instead of getting the ideal line for the next corner. So I don't want to get on this curb because the camber pushes me away from it. So I just want to get as close as possible without touching it. Full power all the way to the exit of the corner. 2 left tires over the curb and then down the straightaway. So great passing opportunity for these corners here. And traffic management is pretty easy, but it's high speed, so you got to be careful. You can really use the outside lane here. I would go back and watch the award ceremony. So the award ceremony, I do action sequence of the year for each class. The GR86 had an awesome side-by-side battle throughout this whole section. It's a great visualization to see what's possible and what kind of do. So typically with this corner here, if you take the outside line on this one, you can kind of hold that speed because the corner is kind of cambered, so you can hold a lot of speed. And as long as you can maintain side-by-side action, so if the car's on the inside here, he's going tight, so he's going to have a little bit less speed. You come around the outside, you got to make sure you carry some side-by-side action, have some overlap, because that gives you the nice inside line for this following corner. There's a little bit less camber for this following corner, the next corner, so it's a little bit harder for the car on the outside. So you could potentially slide ahead of the car on this following corner, and then you have the advantage because you'll have no more overlap and you can use this last corner. Obviously, if they somehow maintain some overlap, you're going to have to be careful because then you can't turn in as much for the following corner. So you have to stay wide here. You'll have 2 left tires on the outside of the concrete and 2 right tires on the inside on the concrete to allow space for them. But you can pretty much maintain side by side through all 3 of these corners. Pretty much no problem. Same with traffic management with different car classes. you don't lose much time staying on one side or another. So it's great to just make sure you leave that space for the other car, but you're really not going to lose that much time through this whole section going side by side with multiple cars. Doesn't matter what class they are, as long as you got to give them room on the inside or the outside, depending on where they're going. So if you're coming on the inside and you see a GT4 trying to launch around the outside, um, they most likely can handle it as long as they haven't gone too fast. Then they'll end up in the wall. Um, that is one thing to kind of maybe a little bit keep in mind is if you see them coming around your outside and they are probably going too fast, if they end up in the wall here, they might end up bouncing back off of it. And what that's going to happen is they're going to bounce off this wall and they're going to come right back across the track in this following corner. So if you see that happening, if you see them coming into the dirt and the grass, you might want to kind of let off the throttle and see what happens with that car because he might come screaming back across. If he's hit the wall hard. If he just kind of goes off in the grass and he slows down, he can probably just come back across. But most likely he's okay if he hasn't hit the wall. If he does hit the wall, he might bounce back across. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Again, if you go off track here, be careful with the rejoin because it is very hard to rejoin safely for this specific corner if you've carried too much speed. Because once you hit the brakes in the grass, it doesn't really slow down very well, so you will end up rejoining kind of awkwardly into the middle of an apex. Hopefully you can slow down enough. And if you have slowed down enough, I recommend staying left with this wall and kind of rejoining the track pretty much on the other side of this rubber line. So you can see the rubber line here. Stay to the grass, stay to the grass, stay to the grass, and kind of rejoin at the top of this line here. That's your safest location to do so. If you rejoin anywhere here, you're going to be right on the racing line, and it's going to cause a massive accident if there's anybody near you. So as far as safety concerns, the rejoin over here would probably be the best thing to do. Theoretically, if you've gone off and you've maintained enough speed, you can rejoin kind of over here before the corner so that people can see that you're back on track and they'll adjust their line type thing. I don't think there's much else to say about this one. The pit entry's over here. Yeah, I think that's it. That's the track guide for the GR86.